Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Now, one of the things that I don't talk about enough is how one of the reasons that I'm sat here right now talking to you all is after I wrote my first tech column on LinkedIn, where I went on to pick up the LinkedIn Top Voice Award for technology. All that was only possible because of some of the inspirational support that I received from other writers on the platform. And it's sometimes hard to believe that 3 years later, we're still in regular contact, all through a group messaging chat. Essentially, technology has brought 15 to 20 people together that were scattered all over the world, and to this day are still actively supporting each other every single day. For me, that is a beautiful thing, and I put so much of my success down to sharing and supporting others and surrounding yourself with like-minded souls. Now, today's guest is someone I'm proud to call a friend, and she decided that all these virtual online friends had so much power that we shouldn't just be virtual, so launched her own conference with a difference called No Longer Virtual, where she gets people from all over the world into one room to learn from each other. The last show was in Atlanta, and next month I'll be joining her in Denver. So without me revealing too much, buckle up, hold on tight, so I can beam your ears all the way to California, so I can speak with Sarah Elkins about No Longer Virtual. A massive warm welcome back to the show, Sarah. The last time we spoke, you'd launched the No Longer Virtual conference over in Atlanta. But can you remind the listeners of exactly what NLV is and what the inspiration was behind it?
Yes, and thanks again for having me back, Neil. No Longer Virtual was born because I had learned so much over the years with my connections on LinkedIn. And I got off the phone with my friend Karthik Rajan and realized that I wanted to meet him face to face. I realized that I had learned so much from my connections online that to take it really to the next level, to build the trust, to learn even more from them, I needed to meet them face to face. And that's how No Longer Virtual was born. Over the years, one of the things that I realized is that people are forgetting how to have a conversation face to face. They're not modeling it for the people around them. There's so much interaction online that people have kind of forgotten what conflict looks like face to face and how to resolve it.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing now is pretty frightening, because as humans, we are hardwired to connect face to face, to talk to each other face to face. We recognize these very minor changes in expression, facial expression, that you can't see on video because you're not seeing it with the full sensation of scent and sound and body language. So you're missing micro expressions. And we're born to touch and to see and to smell the world around us. So if we're not doing that enough, we're seeing a huge increase in depression and suicide rates all over the world. And I really attribute a lot of this to our lack of face-to-face conversations and ability to address conflict and curiosity in a face-to-face way.
So last year, that event was in Atlanta, like I said there. I mean, how did it go? What kind of feedback did you get from the event straight afterwards?
It was amazing. None of us really had any expectations for what would come after, because it was such a new thing and it was trying something completely different. So immediately after, I was getting feedback about how, I'll give you an example. Zach Messler, who's going to be doing a session at the No Longer Virtual in Denver next month, he wrote an article 2 weeks later, and the title was, "I came for content, I left with the tribe."
Wow. And
I can't think of anything more insightful or encouraging than hearing that. So when I was thinking about No Longer Virtual, I wanted it to be more than a meetup. I wanted it to be real learning with solid topics that we needed to talk about. And so I was watching everything coming across LinkedIn, the really relevant content that was getting a lot of people's attention. And so I created this agenda for the last one that capitalized on those topics. And I had people that I knew, that I trusted, that could come and lead discussions on those topics. And the thing that made this such a unique experience was that everyone who came brought their own experiences and contributed to the sessions. So we weren't all sitting in a room listening to somebody speak. Everyone was participating. And the feedback I received as a result of that was that people felt like they learned so much more deeply than they would have, first of all, if it was a keynote or a presenter. But on top of that, hearing from other people in the room and participating themselves made the learning that much more deep and effective. And plus, it was only, it's under 50 people in the room. And if you can't really connect with people in a room that's that intimate, then that's another thing that needs to be
That's a whole other conference right there.
That's a whole other issue.
So when that event closed in Atlanta last year, what were you most proud of? And what was that big takeaway for you personally?
Oh, there was so much about it. One of the things that I was really proud of was the topics were so relevant. And I felt like I learned a lot, even though I was hosting throughout those sessions. I felt like I learned so much in order to leverage these incredible relationships I had built online to improve my life back home. Mm-hmm. So that was my biggest takeaway, was the sessions that were content rich and relevant. But the most valuable memory for me was at the end of the first day. So it was a Thursday and Friday. And my husband, Bob, was in the room with us the whole time, kind of being my gopher. And he was taking pictures and he was helping out with everything. And we had decided to go down to this Chinese restaurant that was only about a block away from the hotel. But I had left a lot of room for people who are more introverted in the schedule so that they could go by themselves or go in smaller groups or get their needs met, process what had happened in the room all day. Yeah. So I hadn't made plans for dinner that night. We had been in the room from 8:30 in the morning until it was about 6 o'clock at night, with just an hour and a half for lunch. And everyone in the room was still visiting at the end of the day. So Dustin McKisson did the last session of Thursday, and it was hilarious. We were laughing so hard that everyone felt light and ready for the next day. So I was doing my housekeeping announcements. We're going to start at 8:30 tomorrow. Breakfast will be available, kind of a continental breakfast. And just so you know, Bob and I are going to walk down to that Chinese restaurant about a block away. The staff here at the hotel said that it's very good. And if anyone wants to join us, please let me know, because if it's going to be a larger group, I want to call the restaurant ahead and make sure that they can accommodate. So I said, can you raise your hand if you think you might want to join us? Almost every hand went up.
Wow.
We were so connected by the end of the day that no one wanted it to end. And 23 of us went out to dinner together that night. To me, that was like, oh my gosh, this is something really special. This is something really unique. Yeah. To have everybody want to continue to spend that time together.
Yeah, no, you can tell straight away, can't you, there? So, but this year you've moved the event to Denver. Why Denver, first of all? It's a beautiful part of the world, but what made you choose Denver?
That's a funny question. When I was looking at the first year of No Longer Virtual, whenever I plan an event, my first thought is, how are people going to get there? How can I make it simple and inexpensive enough for people to get there? And I looked in Atlanta. I really wanted to do it in February because I have some hospitality experience. And I knew we could get really good deals in February. It's a very slow month for hotels and restaurants. So when I realized that I could get a good deal in February, I looked at the hub airports that were easily accessed from anywhere in the country and potentially outside of the country. I was looking at their statistics to see which airports had fewer delays and canceled flights in February. Wow. And Atlanta rose right to the top. So that worked great. But then the other thing is I wanted to make sure we had public transportation from the airport to wherever we were going to go, and that it was a central enough location that no one would have to rent a vehicle. Mm. And Denver, I actually grew up for high school and college. I was in Colorado, and I spent some time in Denver, and I just love that city. Yeah. So when I was planning for the second No Longer Virtual, we almost went back to Atlanta. we really considered going back to Atlanta because the Ritz-Carlton was a wonderful host. They treated us so well and the price was right. But the drinks, the cocktails in the lobby bar where everybody ended up at the end of the day were really expensive. I really like to have a bourbon or a whiskey at the end of the day, just one on the rocks. It was like $26.
Wow. Oh my God.
So that was, honestly, I thought, well, Denver will be a little more affordable for our guests.
I love that angle of the story, though. The price of the cocktails played a major part. Now, I will be on stage with you talking about podcasts and, of course, the work we've been doing together to launch your own podcast. I mean, what excites me more than anything, though, as a tech guy, is that technology has essentially brought us all together and all the attendees together. But you and this conference are putting us all in a room and we're putting the tech and those awful PowerPoint presentations down and meeting face to face and learning from each other. I mean, was that your vision right from the beginning? You know, let's put the tech, let's get rid of death by PowerPoint and let's just meet and connect.
Well, that was definitely a big part of it. I've planned enough events, I've gone to enough conferences that I knew that the pieces that turned me off.
Yeah.
And of course, the death by PowerPoint was my first one. And the second was keynotes. No, I give keynotes. I get hired to do those, but I really don't like sitting through them. And some of them are very entertaining and I've enjoyed them. But every time I've gone to a keynote, I've looked around me at the people in the room and I've seen people that have just as much experience and just as much to contribute to the topic as the person standing up front.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what would be really nice would be if we could actually have a discussion rather than having somebody talk at us. And so that was a big one. Technology still plays a big role because the reality is that technology is what brought us together.
Yeah.
And technology is good. If we're using it properly, it's good. And the fact that it brought us together makes it so that I realize we have to use both. We have to leverage the technology to make our lives face-to-face better. And that was really the big driver. But yes, the sessions, generally we put aside technology and we talk to each other. And I told people before the first one, this is old school. We're going to have notebooks.
Wow.
and the first gift that I gave to everyone who attended the very first No Longer Virtual and the people like you who supported and encouraged that first No Longer Virtual, what was the gift, Neil?
It was a bookmark. I use it all the time now. Honestly, there seems to be a lot of heart and soul in that, but it's not just a bookmark. I know to anyone listening, we're going, calm down, Neil, it's a bookmark, but it was so much more than that, you know?
It's old school.
Yeah.
And there's some value in old school. We can't just dismiss it.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, one of the points I love that you made there was about everybody's involved in the discussion, which you don't get at conferences. And equally, you don't get in corporate meeting rooms, do you? You know, you have one person that rules the show and a few other strong characters in the room that might dominate, and everyone else just sits there quietly thinking, what time do we go for lunch? You know?
Or drinks.
Yeah, or drinks, or reasonably priced cocktails, of course. So will you be singing this year when you're there as well?
As a matter of fact, the plan is, it turns out that there are a few people that are coming that are also musicians. Yeah. And one of the things that I learned from going to a retreat, I got to be a guest at a retreat a year ago last September, where a lot of the people who work for this company happen to be musicians. And what they did is the last night of their event, they would set up PA. So they'd have amps and microphones and they'd rent drums and people would bring their guitars and they would have a jam session the last night of the retreat. And when I saw that, I thought, what an amazing way to really connect with people, because music and food are pretty much the top way that you can persuade somebody to your way of thinking, or at least have a better conversation about something. So my husband and I perform in a couple of bands, and we travel together and we do some interesting gigs outside of our little town in Helena. And I asked him if he would be interested in bringing our music equipment down to Denver for No Longer Virtual, and he said yes. So our plan is that Friday, after the session ends, we'll go and set up the PA in the meeting room. The hotel has agreed that we can use the bar to get our drinks and any food we want to order and bring it into our little meeting room.
Wow.
And we're going to have a jam session. So I'll be singing. My husband will play guitar. I understand that Ranjith Abraham also plays the keyboard. So we're bringing our keyboard from Montana. And Aaron Scogan is one of our participants. He happens to play the guitar. So we're bringing an extra guitar for him. And any other musicians that are coming, if they let me know ahead of time, I can send them some of the songs that we're considering doing and the keys so that they can kind of practice up if they want to.
I was going to say, I've got my cowbell and kazoo packed. I mean, everything needs more cowbell, right?
And a kazoo, definitely. I'm so excited about this. Last year, that was one of the disappointments that I heard because everyone who attended knew that I sang in a couple of bands. Yeah. And they all at the end said, we thought we were going to get to hear you sing. And I laughed because I don't know a lot of vocalists that like the sound of their voices. I don't know a lot of them. Most of us who sing because it's a way of expressing ourselves. It's not because we think we sound good. Yeah. And so when people get disappointed with that kind of thing, I always hesitate. But I'm really excited about this.
So if there is anyone listening that's we must have opened up some curiosity in them there. We've got kazoos, cowbells, everybody getting along, cocktails, but there is a very serious side to it. So can you just help people visualize exactly what they should expect from NLV this year?
Yes. One of the reasons we made this such a solid content-rich agenda was that we want people to be able to come and learn and sometimes even have their companies pay for this professional development. It is professional development. Yeah. The sessions, one of the sessions will be creating relevant, engaging content. And Zach Messler and Amy Blaschka will be hosting and facilitating that session. It's experiential. People will be writing content. People will be getting feedback on content. It's real. It's solid. One of the sessions, and another one I'm excited about, is once you've found your why, how to apply that to your how. And many of us in the room will have had enough experience, will know enough about ourselves that we kind of understand our why. Mm-hmm. Why are we doing this? Why? What really matters to us? What are our values? But the struggle sometimes is, how do we use that why to generate income? What's the how? And so one of the sessions with Kathleen Byers, and Jake Esteras, who actually lives in Denver, they're going to be talking about that. And we'll be, again, strategically working through exercises and really digging into what this means. Another session I'm really excited about is the one toward the end that will be scaling your business and whether you want to scale your business. So Eric Elkins, my brother, who happens to live in Denver as well, will be talking about kind of the pitfalls that he hit and lessons that he learned as he scaled his social media business. And Ben Walker, who owns a multi-million-dollar transcription company in Denver, will be talking about the tools that he has used to allow him to focus on what he does really well, his how. And so tech tools, outsourcing, all the things that those of us who are just kind of at the beginning or mid-level of solopreneurial development will get so much out of that session. And of course, there's your session. And the thing that made me jump into this with you was that a lot of our participants and facilitators have built their brands across multiple media. Yeah. We have book authors who published books, either self-published or went through publishers, used editors. They have expanded their brand by publishing a book in multiple ways. So we'll have some of them in there to talk about what they did and how that worked for them, and giving suggestions to those of us who haven't yet published a book but are interested in it. We have people who built their brand through video, so in multiple ways. So Chris Spurvey, I'm not sure if he's going to make it because he's way up in Newfoundland and the weather sometimes challenges him to get down to the US in February. When he was in Atlanta, he really struggled with that. But he built his brand through YouTube videos and then started sharing them on to Facebook. And then you look at somebody like Amy Blashka, who last year launched into this LinkedIn live video, has just intensely increased her visibility across her platforms. And so video is a big one. So we'll be talking about that, the best and the worst of video, and building your brand that way. And then there's the part of the session that you and I will kind of host and facilitate, which is starting a podcast and what that entails, things to avoid, tools that you can use, and what can you build as a result. That session, again, I'm hoping to publish a book in the next year or so. I want to work on video a little bit. I'm excited to have just recently launched a podcast. So that session is clearly relevant for me. And I know I'm not the only one that is kind of on that edge of developing that brand.
Fantastic. So if there is anyone listening that would like to meet us both in Denver, what's the best way for them to register?
It's very simple. You go to elkinsconsulting.com and there's a registration button right on the homepage, elkinsconsulting.com. And right now there's a $100 coupon if you use the code Connect Beyond the Keyboard. So use the code when you go to register, Connect Beyond the Keyboard, and you'll get $100 off the registration.
Well, I'll add that code to the show notes of the podcast too, just so people can get hold of that nice and easily. But before I do let you go, can you tell the listeners a little about your podcast? I mean, what was the inspiration behind the show and how's that been received so far?
It's funny you ask that. The inspiration was when I knew you were going to come, and you have all of this podcast experience and a huge audience for your podcast. I offered your services to help somebody start a podcast to two people that I thought would benefit from having a podcast released. They both turned me down.
Was it when you mentioned my name by any chance?
No. They both said they just had too much on their plates and it just wasn't something that they could take on right now. And I thought, oh my gosh, they're giving up this huge opportunity to have somebody mentor them and walk them through the process step by step. And they turned me down. And I was so surprised. I was telling my friend that. She said, why aren't you doing that? And I realized that was absolutely right. And here's the kicker. Last year, when I was getting ready to do a storytelling event, I was invited to tell a story at an event in Missoula, Montana, and it was kind of a big deal. It was on a historic stage of a theater called the Wilma, and it was in relation to, or in collaboration with the Norman Maclean Festival. And Norman Maclean wrote A River Runs Through It, which is a very famous movie shot in Montana with Robert Redford, and Brad Pitt was in that movie. It was a fantastic movie. So I was invited to tell a story, and I was pretty nervous about this. And I talked to my friend Jared Chambers, who is on LinkedIn, and he said, why are you not using performance as part of your brand? He said, you tell stories as to audiences. You are a performer, and you tell people and help people tell their own stories. So why would you not incorporate that dimension into your brand? And the light bulb went on. That was it. I realized that the podcast was a perfect venue to share stories and to share other people's stories at the same time.
Now, they often say that the best things of life are on the other side of fear. So whether it be launching your own podcast or going through months of stress of arranging your own event and trying to get people from all over the world into one room, you face more fears than most. But what advice would you offer to anyone thinking of doing the same, but fear keeps holding them back?
There's a limit to what you can choose to do, simply financially and emotionally. And if there's something that you wake up with a fire in your belly and you think, this is something I really want, this is something I know is right for me and will help other people. If you wake up with that and you think it through and you think, well, maybe, and you wake up again like that, and again, it's time to step forward. Letting that go and not putting yourself out there, not taking that risk is like holding back a gift to the universe and saying, I have this gift. I'm really good at this. I know I can help people, but I'm too scared to share it.
Wow, that is inspirational stuff. So thanks for coming on today, Sarah. I do look forward to meeting you for the first time at No Longer Virtual in Denver next month. And if anyone wants to join us, then drop by elkinsconsulting.com. And don't forget to check out Sarah's podcast, Your Stories Don't Define You, How You Tell Them Will, which is available on iTunes and Spotify, I believe. So a big thank you for coming on today, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Neil. I love being on this show with you.
What an inspirational lady Sarah is. I mean, anyone that's ever been involved with arranging a conference and the expense that goes into block booking hotels and so many other responsibilities and having all that on your shoulder on your own will know how stressful it is. And not only that, she's essentially relying on people travelling thousands of miles from all over the world to attend a conference and also get like-minded souls into one room. And not to go through death by PowerPoint, but to spend some time and learn from people from a variety of backgrounds and skill sets on a global scale. So I cannot thank Sarah enough for coming on today, and I look forward to meeting her personally, and also anybody that's listening that is in the Denver area and would like to attend the No Longer Virtual Conference. It'd be great to actually meet you in person too. So I urge you all to pop along to elkinsconsulting.com, and also be sure to check out her own podcast, Your Stories Don't Define You, How You Tell Them Will. If, like me, you had just enjoyed learning from others' life experiences and others' stories and realised just how much we've all got in common with each other. But if you've got any questions about today's podcast or indeed any of the episodes, remember, pop along to my website, techblogwriter.co.uk/podcasts. You'll find all of the episodes along with images of the guests so you can see what everybody looks like. And even more exciting, you can record me a voicemail that I can play on future episodes, or you can just communicate with me that way. But if you like good old-fashioned words, then you can email me at techblogwriter@outlook.com. And if you're more of a social media kind of guy or girl, then just send me a quick tweet at Neil C. Hughes. Well, it's great speaking with Sarah today, and I'm really excited about meeting her next month in Denver, and I hope you guys can make it too. But I'm afraid we're at the end of this episode. So a huge thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in today. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.